the real issue that will occur with rent control is landlords are going to slack off on taking care of their properties. And I'm going to hear about it from legal aid. You need to know that we have 16 Shriver Project legal aid free to lower income people, attorneys that are watching closely because they're just licking their chops. They just can't wait to see this all occur. What will happen is there will be, in landlord-tenant land, there are issues about health and safety. Let's just make it simple. And if you don't provide basic health and safety, the rents can be reduced. And when you serve your pay, rent, or quit notices, because they're not paying, but they're not paying because there's an issue with a lock not working, heater not working. They're not paying it because they're not working, or maybe they don't have employment. They lose their job, all kinds of reasons. But I can assure you that the legal aid attorneys are going to assert the reason they're not paying their rent is because the property was deficient. So if rent control does come through, do everything you can to cut costs, but make bubblegum fixes if that's what's necessary. The temporary good news, every eviction in San Diego County comes downtown, whether it be in North County Vista, all the way out to East County, to the hinterlands, to the border. They all come downtown. One spot, Department 60. A judge who's running for re-election who's gotten a lot of flack, Gary Creep. Terrible last name, but that's what he came with. One of the questions that, if I don't ask it, he always asks the tenant, did you set your rent money aside? And if they didn't set the rent money aside, as state law requires, then it doesn't matter what the reduction will be unless it's really huge. He's going to give possession back. And I like that in a judge when I represent landlords. I've only been doing it for 40 years, so I'm new at the business, but that was 4 decades. It will present a problem. It will, because you won't be able to afford to keep up with the damage that the tenants do. The lower the rents, the lesser tenant you get. I've preached to my clients for years, raise your rents. Oh, but I've had that tenant now for 10 years. I'm sorry, at about year 3 or 4, your tenant believes that they own that property. Keep your rents up. You will get a better class of tenant. I tell that to Dan all the time. Your rents are too low. Get them up. So let's just talk about rent control. What will it do? It's coming. It's gonna come. Just a matter of when. Prepare for it. Start preparing for this. And if at all possible, what national city proposed? Draconian? What a great word. It's terrible. It's offensive. City of San Diego, try and build something? Fees? That's offensive. Somebody forgot that there's a middle ground. This country forgot that there's a middle ground. That's where we live. That's where we are supposed to survive. Somehow there needs to be a meeting. Somehow people in government, people in low income need to come together and understand this is a business. If you raise your rents too high, you won't have an infrastructure to work in all of your restaurants, work in all of your shops. There is a balance somewhere.
Rick, I do have a couple of questions for you in addition. So if either the repeal of Proposition 10 or the national city measures pass, do you expect rent control to be implemented? What would the legal challenges look like?
All right. as I call it, landlord-tenant land. In landlord-tenant land, the state has set up how an unlawful detainer, an eviction works. The problem is getting to that eviction. I know how the eviction will work, and if they modify any of the rules, I'll know about them. One of the problems with some of the rent controls is, in Los Angeles, rent stabilization, they have the Ellis Act. When you buy something and you want to improve it or demolish it, you're going to pay huge relocation costs. Talked with an attorney today in Los Angeles, and what they call it is when the tenants are notified that the property's been sold and they're in a rent-stabilized area, and that was what will occur, they're told, well, you're going to get relocation money. If you disagree with the amount, if you're the tenant and you disagree, it's called Ellisizing the lawsuit. It's going to be a year or two before it gets to me to do the eviction, if I get that opportunity. So when you purchase your properties, factor in the cost of relocating. And I'm going to tell you, 30, 40, 50,000 a door. That is going to make the cost of your projects crazy. And it's your government that's causing this to occur. Tenants aren't doing this. The government's listening to a few people whining and sniveling. And it's more than a few people.
I'm going to start whining and sniveling here in a minute. 50,000 a door? How do you get there?
In Los Angeles, I've heard it go as high as 90 a door. Here's how they do it. Your rent stabilized. Let's say you're paying $2,000 and you've paid it for the last, I'm going to use a personal example. My son lives in Los Angeles, pays $2,200 a month. The property was just sold. He's been there 7 years. Went out looking to see what he could get. $400 to $4,500 a month. That's the deal that he has gotten because of rent stabilization. That's what rent control ultimately does. They factor in moving costs. What are the costs? So let's say it's $2,000 a month more he's going to have to pay. How long is the landlord going to have to subsidize his move? And that is what the Ellis Act is. It's frightening. It is just frightening. And I'll tell you who's making a lot of money: the lawyers. I don't like them any better than you guys do, honest. I really don't. One of the real issues that we're going to have to deal with is, can we get to a realistic number that represents cost of living increases, not consumer price index. That's milk and gas.
Yeah, I mean,
I want rent cost factored into that, because that's the real cost that you pay. Once the government realizes, oh, we're just playing games with you, we're using semantics, let's get the real numbers so that you can come up with a real answer. And then
yeah, and
developers will come out ahead. The people will have reasonable places to live and will take care of them. And maybe the government will open its eyes, or it's just going to close down. There won't be anything left.
Sorry, I think that brings up a good point here on what the equilibrium could look like in other markets.